What's up, you guys? So today we've got this 85 Corvette in the shop. The customer was stating that the vehicle has an excessive oil consumption issue, so we are going to do a compression test as well as a leak down test just to try to establish the condition that this engine is in and then try to pinpoint the source of his oil consumption issues. The compression test as well as the leak down test will let me know if the rings are sealing, if the valves are sealing, of course, but where the oil may be coming from is they may be leaking down through the intake or exhaust valves through the valve guides due to a dried up seal. All these seals are all original from 85, so I wouldn't be surprised if that was the issue. So I'll show you the tools that I need to do this procedure and then we'll get started. Well, the first things we're going to need are a spark plug socket and a ratchet, you know, pretty typical stuff. What I like to do is I like to hook up a remote starter switch so I can actually go and actually hook this up to the starter terminal and this up to the positive terminal, and I can actually jump the engine over at the push of a button. So that's how we'll get the engine to crank over. For the leak down test, we need the cylinder at top dead center so we know that our valves are closed. So what I'm going to use is this borescope, and it'll basically give me a window to view the cylinder to make sure that it is at top dead center. So we're going to need that. Of course, we've got our leak down tester, cheap one. You can pick them up for 40 bucks, I believe. And then we also have a compression tester, so another cheap one. So we're going to use that. These are from Harbor Freight. These are pretty cheap. They actually use the same hoses with the compression tester as well as the leak down tester, so we'll just be using the same one. There's no Schrader valve in this cheap tester, so we don't have to worry about that. If you do have a nicer compression tester, you want to check to make sure your Schrader valve is removed when doing a leak down test. And it's also a good idea to have this thing hooked up to a battery charger, because we will be cranking this over a lot. Got the vehicle jacked up as well as supported by a jack stand, so definitely use a jack stand because I would not trust any of these cheap jacks that are made today. And it's always a good idea to have some cardboard. This is a nice little sheet that came with some furniture we just recently got. So it's genuine Taiwan cardboard, not the thickest stuff, but it'll give you a little bit of padding when you're crawling around on the ground, and most importantly, it'll actually keep you clean. So if you don't want to use a creeper, if you don't have one, this is a great option. And you can see the terminals on there. The small one is the starter terminal, and the larger one on the left is the battery positive. So we're going to jump those two with our gator connector. We've got our black terminal on the positive as the red terminal on the S terminal. On a side note, I heavily encourage the use of wooden blocks on your jacks. That way you don't scratch up or dent in the underside of your car. That is the top of the piston, so I'll keep it outside of the in threads. There's the valve. The valve is up. The valve is down. There it is. And also one way you can tell is basically if you're cranking this over and you feel a big puff of air coming out of that cylinder, you know you're coming up on the top dead center for compression. Both valves on the intake and exhaust will be closed, and now we can hook up our tester. Alright, so first thing we need to do is calibrate the gauge. This has a check valve in it, so we need to open it up. So with that leaking, you can turn this down, take the air pressure out of it. Now we're reading at 0. We'll increase this just a little bit. We need to put it in the set mark. There we go. Anywhere in there should do. Lock it in place. Now we can connect it. As you can see on our gauge here, showing pretty good on a leak down cylinder number 1. So the next thing we're going to do is a compression test. We'll swap out our gauge and we can start cranking. As you can see, we've got 150, so it says it's a healthy cylinder. The rings are sealing up, the valves are sealing, so everything's looking good. Our leak down tester came back with good results, so we'll bleed it off and on to the next one. So we've got 8 more to go. That's pretty much what you got to do, and that'll tell you the overall health of your engine. Well, we know that the rings are sealing up just fine. We've had 165 all the way up to 190. This cylinder had a ton of oil in it. I just did a dry test because I just wanted to test them all out in comparison to each other, so don't get stuck on the numbers. Another thing, you want to hold that throttle wide open to get the highest possible number. We didn't do that. You can kind of see it pulse and then kick back as it pulls the vacuum on the intake. But with the throttle closed, you know, we've got all numbers within range, so they're all the same, which is a good sign. The leak down test, actually all the numbers that we got from that, they all look within range, so there's no problems with that. Now I made a note here of each plug that I pulled out. So we've got cylinder 3 and cylinder 5 that were wet and caked with oil, so we need to check into that, as well as number 4. So I've got a feeling that these are being caused by the valve guides or the valve seals. So I think what's next is we're going to have to change out the valve seals on this car if he wants to take care of the condition. This car is going to be given back to the customer and he can take it as he wants, and if he wants me to do valve seals, we'll have to bring it back at a later date to do it. So I appreciate you guys watching. If this was helpful for you guys, definitely leave a like, and if you're new, don't forget to subscribe, and I will see you guys on the next one.